Hi everyone, this is Sudeshna from the Abundant Psyche, and you are listening to the Not So Corporate podcast. Here we talk about all of the not so corporate things that we corporate entrepreneurs end up doing within and outside our corporate lives. Hi everyone, I'm Sudeshna from theabundantpsyche.com. If you are new here, that's my website, and I help people find their dream careers and present their best selves to the world. I'm also an ex strategy and management consultant, and I work full time as a corporate employee. So I work in data science, and that's why I meet a ton of amazing people in the data world, one of whom is Andrew Rivers. He runs 345 Technologies. We are based both out of London, and we got in touch initially because we wanted to do a podcast together. And here we are. I did a podcast with Angie, so thanks, Angie, for having me there. And I'm so glad to host you in here, and it'll be fantastic to learn a bit more about your journey. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Sudeshna. Thank you very much for having me on your podcast. Really excited about doing today's recording.
So, Andrew, tell us a bit more about your career. How did you get started?
It goes back a long way. So originally I trained as an engineer. So I did aeronautical engineering at university. And funny enough, a lot of people think aeronautical engineering is about sort of blowing smoke in wind tunnels, but most of it is maths and particularly numerical calculus and programming numerical calculus. So I always had a lot of time doing computers. And when I first left university, I went to work in the aerospace industry. And what I used to do was calculations. And as part of that, I got involved in a few initiatives that were very software oriented. And I thought, well, actually, I quite like I like doing calculations, but also like translating those into software. And so I ended up moving more into mainstream software around data, moving data around businesses, designing data structures, designing databases, and I've spent most of the last 20 years consulting in that area, either working for other people or working for my own business. So yeah, particularly 5 years ago, I decided, well, let's actually start doing this on my own account, and that's when 345 was established. And myself and my colleagues in 345, we've been hanging in there ever since, and it's been an amazing roller coaster ride. Nothing prepares you for running your own business.
Right. Just
It's very
before we,
different from what you think.
yeah, I know, as I'm figuring out. But just before we go into there, you said you were consulting for other people. So were these consulting houses, or were you like you can do consulting even being an internal person to a particular
So
company?
yeah, mostly, particularly in the technology sector. So companies that are technology consultancies. So I've spent quite a lot of time in the Microsoft orbit. I was at Microsoft for 6 years, um, subcontracting to them, and then other consultancies that go in. I've been in, I don't know, 50 different companies, telling them how to do software and that sort of thing. So
Mm.
that kind of thing, just technology consulting, but particularly around things like data, things like moving data around, and analytics, making sense of data, all that kind of stuff.
Right. And then you thought that, well, I'm really good at this. I've been doing this for all the big players. Let's just set up 345. And then was there anything to the name 345?
It's a little bit geeky. So it's because it all stems from because I wanted something that had behind it had a kind of a mathematical theme. And obviously a 3-4-5 triangle is like Pythagoras' theorem, so that's where it
Mm,
comes from. It comes from a 3-4-5 triangle.
mm.
So that's why I've got a little right angle triangle on the logo. That's what it is.
Right.
It's
Okay.
Pythagoras' theorem.
Okay. Never realized. But yeah, that's smart, isn't it? Okay, so tell us a bit more about what was different from what you were expecting when you jumped in to do a full-fledged business.
When you're working for someone else, you're doing a particular role. Particularly techies they're very often quite heads down, focused on delivering work. And when you run your own business, you have to look outside the business continually, because that's where you get work. you get work from other people, you get work from other businesses, and so you can't take a sort of an introverted view of just saying I'm good at what I do. I need to focus on doing a good job. You need to actually look outside, engage with other people, and spend. And I think I kind of knew that in an abstract way. What was a surprise was just how much time you have to spend engaging with other people, being outside of business, talking to people, even if it doesn't necessarily directly lead to work, but you have to have that kind of very open and outward facing view of the world. So that was the first and perhaps the biggest thing. The other thing is, of course, that there's a whole range of skill sets that you need to learn. That every traditional business has functions like sales, marketing, finance, operations, and effectively you need to learn all of those. So the learning curve is very steep as well, particularly if you haven't, if you don't have an MBA background or something like that. Just the sheer amount you have to learn, is daunting, but it's also exhilarating at the same time.
Yeah, and I suppose even if you do have an MBA background, for that matter, personally, when I was a strategy consultant, I knew in theory that there are these different functions within a business, and I was solving problems for these functions. But actually taking a step back and running your own, like there's a complete shift in understanding how big things are when you are dealing with those problems, like what those problems actually amount to. So what, in your opinion, in the last 5 years has kept you the most busy?
That is a really, really difficult and hard working question, because because I've got a technology business. You've got I think technology moves so fast. You have to continually learn with that, but also to be good at business in any sense, it's all about how much you can learn. So the busiest thing is just you almost have to approach learning as being a core part of your job. Just learn. It's I mean, even sort of I think Mark Zuckerberg sets himself a goal of the number of books he's going to read every year. So it's something like 25 business books and 25 personal books every year. So going through a book a week. It's no coincidence that people that are in very, very senior positions learn a lot, because it's a core, it's a really core element of being successful.
And typically, would you say you learn a lot from books, or what are your sources of learning?
I'm quite a visual learner, doing a lot of learning via YouTube. That's which things like your podcast, learning from other people's podcasts. I do read books, and I do have audio books, and I seek out other people that I can learn from and ask them questions. There isn't a single way of learning. Every individual has their preferred methods, and so you can't tell someone else how they should learn. But I quite like either learning by doing or learning by watching.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm the same in the sense of learning by doing. I am rubbish at actually watching, so I'm more of a reader. So I'm weird. Like I'd look at TED Talks, and instead of listening to them, I read the transcript. So there's I feel like I read
that's faster though.
Yeah, it's faster. That's why I do it, because time, that's what we are struggling against. And actually, coming to time, then how do you manage your time? Because a business is a full-time job. It's a full-time job plus some more, actually, not just 40 hours a week, is it?
One of the things that's really important for people is to develop their own system. The most simple system is a to-do list. As things grow, you end up with I have like a to-do book. So but there's a reason for that, because I have a page for the stuff that needs to be on the website, a page for the the other marketing things, a page for the next people I need to get in touch with, etc. So I just make sure that I capture things, partly, and I do that partly because I find writing things down helps them stick in my memory. Other people like to use an app for that, but I quite like having them written down. But having a system to make sure that capture everything that needs to be done. And then every week I go through and I look through everything that's on my plate, and I say, this week I'm going to do these things. And I have a list of maybe 10 things that this week I'm going to do these 10. And overarching that is the whole planning. Can't understate how important planning is.
Mm,
So both personal and business. So you have to do your goal setting, and then I plan what I want to achieve this year, and
mm.
then which of those things are going to be achieved in which quarter, and then what's going to happen each month, and it becomes more and more granular. But by the time it comes to these are things I'm going to do this week, I know that those are in the grand scheme of things, those are contributing to the monthly goals, the quarterly goals, the annual goals, and ultimately my long-term goals. I think putting that kind of structure in place is something that took quite a long time for me to get right.
Yeah, goal setting, you're right. That's so important. But if you can, in some sense, visualize the goal, it just is so much easier to almost reverse engineer to it rather
Yeah.
than just saying, okay, I feel like doing this today. And so I'll do a podcast from now till God knows when, and I have no idea to what it's contributing. How do you then approach things or put things like learning into that system, which is the basis of how you achieve your goal, but also not, contributing to, say, marketing or sales, or it won't get you the next project, so to speak, but it will get you more. So how do you build a system of learning into that goal setting process then?
The process isn't formal. It's at that planning level that you sort of say, well, okay, I don't know enough about these things in order to achieve them. If you're doing a podcast, for example, you need to sort of decide what technology you can use for the podcast, and you've got to learn how to use that technology. You've got to learn how to edit. How do I
Mm,
publish it? So you can kind of, even with something like a podcast, you can probably identify 5, 6, 7 things that you need to learn
mm,
in order to be able to do that, and that you and so the same thing applies to other things in business. If you need to generate a certain cash flow, you need to learn how to do cash flow management.
mm.
And so and so these things go on the learning goes hand in hand with trying to put together the activities and the goals for a particular period of time.
Right. So I guess what I'm hearing is learning as a CEO depends on all of these things. So you are learning a bit of cash flow, a bit of marketing, a bit of podcasting technology, and your core tech bit. But as a techie, if you were an employee, you are probably learning just one of the, like a part of a particular business unit rather than the whole overarching
Yeah, so
business.
techies generally they learn tech,
Mm,
whereas as you go from being on the tools to being management to senior management to exec, the the skills, like you say, the skills needed are very different, and the things you need to learn are different. It's
mm,
because as you progress, it's things like how to set strategy, and is an important thing. How to manage, the amount you need to learn about managing people,
mm,
and that's one of the biggest ones, actually. Understanding how to communicate what to someone else, what needs to be done, to make sure they've got the skills to do it, to make
mm.
sure they're happy and that they're also achieving their personal goals, and that all that happens in a way that everyone's contributing and working in the same direction and working as a team. The amount of people management skills and knowledge that's required is actually immense.
It almost goes unstated at times as to how important people are as a part of the business machine, if you'll call it that. And we kind of treat it like human resources, like all other resources, but actually humans, because we are so different, we can talk and we have emotions and we have personal goals and we have to align with our business goals and so on. So yeah, you're right, like people management is such a big part of it. In terms of learning though, is that coming from a techie and tech background, when you were learning, I think, deep tech, to learning about all of this, including people management, would you say there was one particular area that you found more difficult than the others to learn about?
I wouldn't necessarily say difficult. What I would say is the one thing that stood out to me, that was the real light bulb moment that unlocked the potential for everything else was really understanding personality profiles, understanding the difference between different types of personality, and how they're motivated, how they're communicated to. That was just a revelation that unlocked a whole load of other things. I suppose off the back of that is communication styles as well, because being able to understand other people better, particularly through personality profiles, was just a revelation. I understood why I was upsetting everyone, and I understood why I was getting frustrated, and it made me more tolerant of my family. It made me better with my friends. It was a revelation, and so it was like, why don't they teach this at school? Because it's just so important.
That's right. So what were these personality profiles? Were these the Myers-Briggs or something else?
Well, the one that I work with at the moment is called DISC, which is it's a relatively simple model. It's simpler than Myers-Briggs, and it's also similar to ColorWorks. I don't know if you've ever heard of ColorWorks.
No.
ColorWorks is the same thing as DISC, but they give it colors rather than names.
Okay.
But effectively, what it does is it only works off two main measures. One of them is whether you're direct or indirect. So obviously, direct people generally talk a lot, and indirect people are the very quiet ones. And then the other one is whether you're open or guarded. And based on that, you've got a spectrum of personality types. And it's a relatively simple model, which is why I can manage to grasp it. It's very applicable to be able to understand people. I mean, if anyone wanted to pick up a book and read it, there's one called The Platinum Rule.
The Platinum Rule. I'll have a look into that. Once you started understanding the personality types, what sort of shifts did you realize were happening? Like, how were you starting to be different in approaching these different personality types? And also, the other big thing about personalities that I tend to struggle with a little bit is, how do I know that this person is this sort of characteristics? Because people don't kind of go in a bubble saying, okay, I'm INTJ or whatever. So how do you kind of pay attention to what sort of personality you might be dealing with, and then take your action based on that?
Broadly within this, the Platinum Rule or the DISC system works on four main personality types, which are like a directing personality type, a kind of the socializing personality type, the supportive personality type, and analytical. And techies, techies tend to fall into the analytical personality type. They don't talk much, but they think very deeply, very detail oriented, and then supportive people are the ones that just generally make organizations tick. They're the ones that everyone they help everyone else out, and they get things done, and don't tend to cause a fuss, but they also tend to be relatively quiet. And then we all know kind of the extrovert sort of socializer ones. They're the people that are usually in sales, but the people that are generally very chatty, very outgoing. But then I discovered I was actually a directing personality type, which means I talk a lot, but I kind of very goal driven, very big picture. And so so one of the things that one of the big revelations was that I'm kind of not detail oriented, big picture, quite. I get things quite fast, and that stresses the techies out. They kind of like to understand everything, so they're more detail oriented, like to actually make sure that they've got all the thought processes in place and understand things to a very great depth. And so once I understood, for example, that the techies need the detail, and they need to understand why and have all and have the space and the chance to think about things. I think that made me a lot more patient, because understanding that they need that sort of thing.
How about getting information back then? Because one of the things I think, again, techies struggle a bit with, and this is data people, insights people, many a times, they're not particularly very good at, they know that they have done all the great work, but they are not good at kind of bringing the story back and communicating, okay, this is what's happening in your business, and that is why this goal is not achievable, or that is why this thing doesn't work, or I will need more time. And I think exec slash senior management at times struggle to work with techies. That's one of the big reasons why. So how do you then get your techie team to speak the language that you want, or do you try to kind of flip around your thinking a bit?
Now that I know what I need, I'm able to explain and to coach people a bit more over a period of time as to what I'm expecting. So I think that's so. Yeah, again, in much as we all love the techies, but they sometimes it's not that it's that they want to tell you the whole story, and I'm almost sort of saying, well, let's start with the most important things. So if you could boil this down into 2 sentences, what would they be? And let's go from there. And so to start off at that, the key takeaway points, and then if we need to drill into things as to why, then we can look at the information behind that. If you're managing other people and they've got different communication styles, it's just being able to explain to them what you need as well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think that's really crucial to understand how do I communicate it in 2 lines and then 2 paragraphs and then 2 pages, that sort of a thing. And there's a really good book that I came across when I was in consulting called The Pyramid Principle. It's one of the well-known books in strategy consulting, and it just teaches you communication style. Like, you start with the pyramid.
Yeah.
Think of a pyramidical approach to communication. You give a bit of what you need to know, and then a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. So yeah, that's really interesting. And I suppose with techies as well, it's when you know that this line of code, if I could just solve that, it would be all done. But when you say it like that to someone who's far removed from the code, it just doesn't make any sense. You're like, okay, so why can't you fix the code? Well, then starts the story.
But what also add to that, though, back onto the pyramid thing, the pyramid thing is an important thing, because that's kind of, like I say, it starts. That's how you direct the communication. But another important thing with communication is that communication. People think that communication is you yourself transmitting to someone else. And the important thing is to understand that communication is how it's received by the other person. It's understanding that it's how the other person receives it. That's the important part.
If the listener hasn't understood you as a communicator, have not done the job. So It's not their job to go figure it out. It's your job to explain better. That's so powerful. About 345 Technologies then, what is it that you do that was different from, like, how have you seen your business grow from, year 0 to year 5 now?
When we started, it started off as being a company of just good techies that knew what we were doing, but without necessarily being able to communicate that or to put that as a proposition to sort of say, well, this is to explain. Again, it's part. Again, marketing and that sort of thing is also about communicating and being able to explain to people, first of all, to find the right people that you're going to help, and to explain to them properly how it is that you actually help them. And so, and that's been the big journey, has been understanding not just that we're really good at what we do, but how we explain that to other people and how we position that, which is effectively because it was just like, oh, we do this sort of tech stuff. And now it's, we help people build their business on data. And in order to build their business on data, you have to be able to absorb that data. You have to be able to store it. You have to be able to, crunch it, analyze it to the point where ultimately you can decide and act based on that. And unless you're doing something, unless you're actually doing something that results in better actions, better decisions. The way that we look at that now to make sure that we can receive the data, we can store it, categorize it, cleanse it, analyze and predict, decide and act. And we just have a model that runs in that way. And I think that's the big difference, because we no longer talk about technology. We talk about what ways do you want to transform your business using data, and what is it you want to achieve? Do you want better quality? Do you want to change do you want faster cycle times? Do you want to have more understanding, and that's the big change. That's the big sort of revelation in the business is just understanding how we talk to people about what they want. Once you know what the problem is you want to fix,
Hmm.
you say, okay, what tools do I want to use for that? But we don't lead with the tools that, because it used to be like, here's the tools in my toolbox. Right,
Yeah,
what's the problem? What's
exactly. A hammer is not superior to a screwdriver,
Yeah,
and
it's like,
something like your knowledge in Python is, while it's very, very important, is not superior to someone's knowledge in another technology, for example.
it's just that what's appropriate for this particular, what's
Exactly.
appropriate for this task in hand.
So a lot of people ping me to ask how they can get into data science, and quite a lot of techies out there who have been working in tech for a long time. Now they think, well, one is that data science is a growing field, but also the other thing, I suppose, is some of the tech they used to work with is becoming more and more obsolete. And they know that the potential for data science is these days, like for the next 10 years anyway, I think is massive.
Yeah.
So they want to be getting into data science, and the first question they ask is, okay, so what tool should I be learning? So what would your answer typically be to someone like that?
One of the first people I worked for when I went mainstream into software always said to me, he says, the most important thing is that you learn the business first and the software second.
Mm,
Because then you know that you're doing that if you're building some software, you're building the right thing. And the same thing applies to data science. I think that you need to learn what the business problems are, what the problems are it's important that you want to solve, and whether an answer looks sensible is so important compared to I've learned this tool or that tool or the other tool. But also, I think aptitude and attitude are very important because, like you say, technical skills, technologies become obsolete, new ones come along. And you can teach hard skills. You can't teach attitude. So I'd rather employ someone that was motivated and willing to learn and to
mm,
learn new things every day than I would, that sort of person is much more important in my business than someone that has all the right skills but thinks they know it all and doesn't want to learn.
mm.
So that if you could advise people, it'd be to sort of say, well, okay, technology changes. If you've got a thirst for learning new things, you'll be okay because you can always learn. You can always learn things. Whereas if you learn Python, so what? You learn Python.
Yeah, what do you
It's
do with Python? Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. And I couldn't agree more. Like you and I have had this discussion about how important domain knowledge is, and I say when people ask me what tool do you want to learn, I say extremely counterintuitive, but you go learn the business first, and from there you figure out what the business needs. And of course, Python or Keras or TensorFlow or all these shiny new things are extremely valuable, don't, but without the right context, if you don't have the business, what do you do with Python? Like, for example, people come to me all the time, the recruiters come to me all the time, and they talk to me about this amazing machine learning person who's running deep neural nets, and I'm like, but what do I do with them? Like, I don't need
yeah.
someone to run deep neural nets for my business, so why are you telling me all of this? And then sending me 5 CVs, that's not going to help your business, that's not going to help my business, that's not even going to help the data scientist that you are kind of trying to help out. Do you have any tips on how people can kind of shift their thinking from more tech or product focused? So, because I say, if you know Python, you are a product. You can be replaced with
Yeah,
someone who knows Python. But if you know business and how my business runs, and you know how to do it in Python, you suddenly become someone who's not replaceable as easily.
that's a really good question, and I'll just ramble on about a few things. One of them is for a lot of people, it's you need to find something that you're genuinely interested in. Because again, if some people are interested in particular industries, you have to kind of find a way in which your personal goals, your personal interests, and the business you work in all combined. And then it's all, if you're interested in something, then then that kind of learning will come. But there's no point in. So, for example, I mean, let's say, so a lot of people want to go into finance just because they think there's a lot of money in finance. But if you're not actually interested in how it works, it's always going to be a struggle. You're always going to be kind of thinking, I'll just learn enough just to do this. Whereas if actually the whole thing of, well, how does this whole picture fit together? How does risk work, or how do payment systems work, and how do we how does settlement at the Bank of England work, and all that sort of thing. If you just understand, if you're interested in how the whole thing works, then then people, you will naturally, it's almost like you will naturally become a valuable person, because you're interested in it, you learn more, and by learning more, you become more valuable. Whereas if you're not really interested, you'll just learn enough.
Yeah.
And I'd say to anyone, if you're in a job where you just learn enough to do this thing, you're probably in the wrong place, because you probably need to find something else where your interest can really be ignited.
Yeah. And there's something I tell people, and this is not something that many people talk about. I feel like finding your passion is kind of, at times I could say, well, I love to cook, but who will pay me for that? But equally, I feel like it's not like always that I'm cooking. So what is it that you are doing all the time when no one's asked you to do it? What are you learning about? Maybe that's the sort of industry that you want to get into, and maybe do something in that industry, in tech, in data, in whatever it is that you are interested, because that, I think, actually helps us also to reverse engineer a lot of this thing that I already know a lot about the domain, and I can help.
It's one of those ones, it's a rabbit hole that we could go down there and stay in there. We could stay down that rabbit hole for a long time.
Okay,
So,
I have one backtracking a bit back into your business, from zero to like being by yourself to hiring your first set of employees. So for all the entrepreneurs out there, how long a journey was that? Was it scary? Like, because now it's not just you covering your cost anymore, you are paying someone else to do stuff for you. So how long did that take? What sort of mindset shifts did you have to go through?
I think that's a really hard one, and again, it depends on the people involved, because I've got a couple of other business partners, and one of the things that we really focus on in our business is everyone may say this, but we really care for people, and what we don't want to do is to take people on and then to find that we haven't got work for them, and then we've got to then we've got to make them redundant or whatever, and that sort of thing. So actually treating people the right way and really taking care of people is something that's really important for us. And so we perhaps agonized over whether to employ people or not, probably more than we should have done, because it is a leap of faith. Ultimately, I suppose one of the things that I've learned is that there is never a point when you feel really comfortable and everything is so certain that you can say, I'm certain now, yes, we can do this. That there is always the uncertainty, there is always unpredictability, and sometimes you just got to actually say, I've got to stop thinking about this now. I've got to stop agonizing. I need to make a decision and go with that. So that was one thing that was hard, was actually saying, okay, the time is now right to employ people. The other thing is, this is an important kind of mindset thing to learn, is that, is this work, what is business owners' work, and what is workers' work? So you need to, everything that happens in the business, you almost need to say, does this require me as the owner to do it, or can it be done by someone else that's working in the business, or be outsourced? So, can I get my accountants to do my bookkeeping? Of course I can. That's perhaps the easiest one. So you need to concentrate on the things that are owners' work as opposed to workers' work. And then the other thing is always to just to understand that who's the best person for this. For example, I'm interested in marketing and I quite enjoy it, but I'm not a marketing expert. So get someone that is better than you at doing that role. And
Mm,
that's the other thing, is understanding that you need to you're not the best at doing everything, so you need to get people that are better than you at doing all those other roles, whether that be full-time, part-time, outsourced, whatever it is. But get the right people with the right expertise doing those other things, because it's far more productive to if you try to do everything yourself, you just end up burdened by all that. And you need to be able to let it go and say, I need to find someone that's better than me at this, and have the and almost have the humility to say, I'm never going to be good enough at that to do it in my business, and I need someone else to do that for me.
yeah.
And that's hard. That's a surprisingly hard thing for a lot of people. But when you arrive at that point, it's very liberating as well.
Mm, because you kind of let your ego go and say that, yeah, you know what, I'm not an expert at this. Let's
Yeah,
just
let's find one.
yeah, let's find one. Exactly. Okay, brilliant. I thoroughly love this. Anything else that you might want to add to our conversation, Andrew?
The only other thing, and I think we touched on it when we were talking previously, but yeah, because I know your podcast goes out to a lot of people who are looking to build their career, and just sort of say that goal setting is a very important thing, and learning how to goal set, but also just having the the mindset to sort of say, every day I just need to be better than I was yesterday, and because that's how ultimately you progress over a period of a week or a month. You might not notice the difference, but as long as you say, tomorrow I'm going to be better than I am today, and tomorrow I'm going to learn more and know more than I do today, then those small changes over many days and years is what makes people successful. You can't just you don't just turn up one day and say, I'm going to be a sprinter, and the next day you're in the Olympics. That happens from people doing a little bit of training every day for many years. And it's the same with career. It's just to understand that it takes time, but as long as you consistently make sure that you're a little bit better tomorrow than you are today.
Oh yeah, I
Then
love that insight. I remember on the back of that an ad that I saw, I think from one of the UK banks. If only people knew how many nights it takes to be an overnight success.
yeah,
That's right. The compounding of skills and strengths and wanting to be better through 10 years. Like, it doesn't seem like a lot in 10 days, but actually even in 10 days you can do a lot. But in 10 years, just imagine if you did nothing and someone who did everything right day
yeah.
after day after day, the difference
And
that's going
and,
to
and
make.
the people that seem to be effortlessly successful,
Yeah,
actually they're the ones that are usually working hard, learning stuff, reading books,
yeah,
pushing themselves all the time, and the result is that it looks effortless,
yeah,
but it never is.
yeah,
It's always the result of putting that work in every day.
yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, exactly that. And I love this amazing piece of insight. And interestingly, and I didn't even realize that this is going to happen. I think towards the beginning of July, we are doing a goal setting or motivation sort of webinar. But anyway, if anyone finds it useful, whenever it's ready, I'll put a link down below in the description box for you to join if you're interested. Amazing. And Andrew, in case people want to get in touch, want to know more about 345 Technologies, where can they find you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. Funnily enough, there aren't many Andrew Riverses, but I'm sort of linked. I think it's LinkedIn Andrew Rivers, and also the website is 345.technology. So and you can get in touch from there. So always love to hear from other from other people and share experiences and that sort of thing. So if anyone wants to get in touch, you're more than welcome.
Brilliant. Lovely to have you on, Andrew. I have just enjoyed this so much. Thank you so much, and I'll speak soon.
Okay, thanks, Sudeshna. Speak soon. Okay.
Yep.